Hey there, YouTube. I have another video coaching review. Again, this one comes from Andrew. I've got a lot of his that are coming out recently because I'm trying to catch up to get up to speed with his, so that way I can get others up as well. So anyway, huge thanks to Andrew for allowing me to use this as content on my channel. Many other people struggle with the same issues that he is and that others are, so I really appreciate being able to use this as content. If you're interested in your own video coaching review, essentially what I do is I sit down here in front of my computer and I review anything that you want me to in regards to archery. That could be form and technique, that could be tuning issues, or that could be for general training advice. So if you're interested in getting your own video coaching review, I'll have links in the description below to my website, jkaminski.com, and there will also be the links for Andrew's previous video coaching reviews in case you're interested in checking those out. Thanks again to Andrew. We'll get right to it. Hey there, Andrew. Thanks for submitting another video coaching review. No worries about the hiatus there. No big deal there. So let's see here. You are looking for, you've been focused more on the hook and grip now, and your hook has the hand bowed to encourage the relaxation, which I'm assuming is that, which is good, with your thumb pulled back, resting on your finger tab palm plate for consistent positioning. Sorry about that. I had to take a phone call. So you're trying to get your thumb resting on your finger tab palm plate for consistent positioning, and that may work as far as, you know, putting it really far back for sure. Your grip, you're trying to get your palm loosely sorted in the place at set position where you should be positioning your hand in the throat at set and find the pressure point at setup. So I saw a secondary email where you were asking essentially, you know, about this detail and as far as putting your hand consistently in your grip. And basically, I have a couple of videos that I've made about putting your hand in the right place, but in a nutshell, when I set everything is at set position. I set everything at set position and that is it. I do not reset at setup or anything like that. Everything's done at set and then stays that way moving forward. The main thing is to rock your hand up into the pivot point, then push down into the pressure point. That will set your hand in the ideal position up and down, making sure your hand's nice and snug up into the grip. Now, as far as where the position is, I feel and this is why I like a sharp edge on my grip, the left edge specifically, because I really can feel it on that lifeline here in that grip area. And so you can visually check and put your hand basically being bisected by the left side of the grip itself. Come here, Annabelle. And that's basically the position. And then just keep that pressure point nice and low with a relaxed wrist, but pushing towards the target with the thumb, and that's really as good as you can get. So basically you set it at set and then go from there. Now, it really will depend where your set position is, if you can do this at all because of you know, where the bow is in relation to your hand. So it looks like you definitely can. Some people will put this bottom limb out further, this top limb back further, which makes the grip at such a flat angle that it's almost impossible to get the pressure or the hand position proper into the grip itself. So I think you're going to be just fine there as far as that's concerned. So using only your bow arm to lift the bow, requiring now that you grab the bow a bit. You really shouldn't have to, although you do have very little tension here as far as the actual preset is. So I guess that makes sense as far as needing to grab the bow per se. So maybe if you can, in this position here, try to get the bow a little bit further out. I like to put this bottom limb, and this is something that you might want to just experiment with. I like to put this bottom limb on the inside of this leg here, and then that will move the bow further away. And if you keep this position like you are here with the draw side, you'll have a little bit of preload into the system in regards to having, you know, I guess somewhat of a draw length already, whereas right now you're at brace height. So that way there's no tension of the bow pressing back into your hand through the grip. So that way you now have to actually grab the bow to lift it. But if you have a little bit of extra draw length right here without pulling this side back, but rather moving the bow forward slightly, that'll allow you to just lift the bow without grabbing it. Sorry, I keep hitting the wrong button there. Let's see here. While turning your upper body into alignment, you keep your hips over your feet as much as possible. Great. This is in contrast to before where you would use your draw arm. Draw arm is a counter force to bring the bow up and get into alignment on the way up. And then you let your hips move in line with the target line. So yeah, that was a problem before for sure. I think you may feel like I am still raising the bow too high, but you're raising it as high as you need to set your palm into the pressure point so you can start with the draw arm movement towards setup. It's not too bad. As far as the pressure point, setting it, it should be, because your hand is in an okay position here. But if I guess it would really depend on what your grip tape is. If you're using the skateboard decking, or if you're using it looks like an Archery grip there. So if you're using the pyramid stipling or something, you should be able to lift the bow with the pressure point pushing into it, because the hand shouldn't be sliding up on that grip, especially once you get the bow to about this position. There should be enough preloaded stress and tension into the system to where if you're lifting with the heel of your hand, the palm of your hand, instead of the throat of your grip, you should set your bow in that good pressure point scenario as far as that's concerned. Now, as far as how high you lift it, for me, I mean, my maximum lift that I really like to see is the shelf never cresting the center line of the target. So I never lift the shelf up higher than the gold, essentially, on, at 70 meters. Obviously, that's different for everybody, and there's some other things that I think we'll look at depending on how everything looks as far as shooting's concerned. Getting a little bit more maybe rotation with the backside earlier in the lift of the bow may be a good idea. You are imagining pulling straight back along the target line, keeping your bicep tight against your forearm to keep everything together. I will check that as far as what I see there, because generally speaking, pulling straight back along the target line is never, in my opinion, really the best idea. For me, it's all about rotating the right side and just increasing the distance from the grip to the back shoulder, and that's enough to get the motion correct as far as how you draw the bow back. Now, if you start thinking about pulling on the target line, all sorts of weird forces start to happen. Lots of excessive amounts of bicep tension, forearm tension, and things like that start to happen, in my opinion, because people will start to associate not just pulling on the target line, but also pulling on the arrow, as opposed to pulling from the grip. Pulling from the grip is where it needs to come from, not pulling on the arrow. You don't pull on the arrow because you're not holding the bow up by the arrow. You're holding it much further down than that. So you actually pull through the grip and not pull up on the arrow line. Because if you pull from the arrow line, then you get bicep and forearm tension, as opposed to pulling from the grip. And it's not just high-low, it's just where is the power going into the bow, and in which direction it's going towards. You're also setting your anchor with your index finger between the second and third knuckle. Yep, that should be good. Whereas before it was the second knuckle of your thumb, okay? You're able to do this now, you think, because of your revised hook, most likely. You're envisioning a release that ends with your hand cupping your shoulder. You're doing this to avoid a backslap, violent release. All of this has you feeling much more in control, and as far as you can tell, your shot looks more like it's supposed to. Cool. That said, your group's still aren't their tightest, as you see in the video, even if you were to discard the shots you just misexecuted. So your questions are, how am I feeling about the form changes? Anything's next to work on? I'll check that. Thoughts about the groupings? You don't think this is a case of poor tuning, but you're using 575 micros, super drive micros that you think are tuning stiff. And when you're using 40-pound limbs, even turned all the way in, you're now using 36-pound limbs 2 turns in, and so you suspect the arrows are way over spine. You're much happier with this draw weight. However, you can shoot arrows all day long, whereas the 40s you were done after 60. Well, that's a good thing. I'm glad that you're no longer overbowed. This will make your form changes much easier. Yes, the way that the arrows are tuned can affect the grouping for sure, especially being much more sensitive to mistakes. So the thing is, as you're making form changes, it's very difficult to really only see linear progression in regards to grouping. You kind of have to have a healthy relationship with seeing the groups opening up as you're making changes, but you kind of have to stick to something for a considerable amount of time until you can decide whether or not it made a difference in a positive or a negative way. People have a lot of problems in archery, in my experience, as far as what I see, from trying something for too short of a period of time before they really even see something happening. And then they make another change, and then it's just this spiral that never ever ends. So archery, you kind of have to do something for a good amount of time, probably about 2 weeks, before you really even have an idea before it is, you know, a good thing or not, or you can see some progress or not, because it's kind of tricky. Because obviously there's so many things that are happening. You have to have good feeling, and then if you don't have your feeling associated with what you're doing in regards to, you know, something being new, so it feels foreign, you're not really ready yet to start to feel the little nuanced differences from shot to shot. And so that way you kind of end up running into some problems from time to time in regards to just not being able to recognize changes. So it's really important, and this is where it may benefit you a considerable amount, if you do a good mental routine with the preload and reload before and after each shot. So preload being as you are in this position, just kind of getting ready to shoot after the arrow's in the bow, and right about here, before you lift the bow, go over mentally what you're trying to work on, the form things you're making changes on, and basically just run over a good shot, but basically focusing on the things that you're changing and working on. And then you actually shoot the shot, right? You know, I can see you're doing something, I'm assuming mentally. But after you shoot the shot, you have to analyze how it went. Did you do it correctly or not? And then redo it again with the correct way, and then put the arrow in the bow and do it all over again. If you do that, you're really going to see faster changes. So it may not take you 2 weeks to make these slight changes. But remember, it's just a lot to ask of the system because you have old habits and you have to overcome them. So it does take time to kind of erase those things and make progress, at least as far as I'm concerned. So let's see, basically all straight on shots so we can see some stuff here. So we'll get into the form thing. Let me open this up, move this over. There. It's definitely much better, a lot more fluid as far as the movement's concerned. And overall, definitely looks much better as far as just the overall movement. Definitely much better. Yeah, the follow through is excellent. You're definitely looking a lot more correct, for lack of better terms. One thing that I see just off the bat that'll really help you kind of with the fluidity of the shot and trying to keep things a little bit more easy to work with. Sorry, let me move the mic so I can get the cat up here. Just being ridiculous. Is, what the heck, how did that happen? As you lift the bow and you know, lift where you say maybe it's a little bit high for what I would like. It's not a big deal. I don't mind. You can do it high if you'd like. There's something I want to talk about on the backside as well, but let's focus on the bow arm. You lift, and then you definitely come down to almost level, which would be almost an 18-meter type of sight mark. And then as you get back to full draw, you have to lift up a lot to get the sight back on target. So try not to let that sight come down so far as to having to lift back up again after you get to full draw. Really try to lift up. You can settle a little, and as you draw, that draw side should actually settle slightly even more as you're drawing back, and then the pin comes down from the top at that moment. You don't want to lift up, set down, pull, and then lift up. It's a lot of excess energy that you're having to burn, and it kind of ruins the flow of the shot. So it's more of a lift, and I don't care again how high. And as you start to get into the rotation, this draw, or the bow side will settle slightly, and then as you pull even more, as you're getting into loading right up into anchor, that arm is moving down a small amount, and that's when the sight is actually starting to come down from roughly just over the top of the bail down onto the target face as you anchor that way. And it'll help you with allowing the shot to flow a lot more. You'll be able to keep your tension and direction much better and much easier, because you'll just be able to get from drawing the bow, building that pressure into the system correctly, and then immediately flowing into pulling through the clicker. Annabelle, don't purr into the microphone. And so that will allow you to just kind of flow a little bit more easily and not have so much start-stopping to keep the ball moving in the right direction, and things will feel much easier. So really try to do that and see if that helps at all. That one should be a fairly easy change, potentially. You might even want to try it at blank bail just to start with. Because again, you'll just be able to keep things going a little bit more fluidly. So, I can see you're definitely getting in the right direction. Things look much better. It will take some time to get rid of some of the old habits, of course, and then also work on these new changes. But that's kind of normal. So, let's talk about the draw side. When you lift the bow, you're lifting it okay. It's, in my opinion, a little bit excessive with this back elbow as far as the lift is concerned, because you can relax a lot more and not use that deltoid to lift up the elevation of the elbow so much, and to kind of relax it down a little bit. Partly why I want you to consider this is that as you draw back, the deltoid engagement just continues to increase, and now you have a much too high of an elbow. If we were to draw a line from the tip of your elbow through the knock and continue down below, it's intersecting with the riser, definitely down below the grip. I think it's coming from you lifting up the bow the way you are, with a little bit of excess lift in the draw side to lift that shoulder. You can help it up, but don't go past level if you can. Level with the ground, meaning the humerus, the upper bone in your arm. Try to keep that level with the ground and don't lift it up higher than that, because that will allow you to really start to engage correctly in the mid to lower trap area and engaging those rhomboids to pull that scapula towards the spine and around in the correct manner. If you go up too high, now you're going to start engaging things like levator scapula, the thing that makes the scapula move up, and using it potentially a little bit too much in the way of bicep. So if you can try to keep that elbow down a little bit, and at the same time, like I said, probably try, and I would do this with a stretch band first, try to gain distance from this posterior deltoid, the land 2 area, right? The backside of your shoulder and the grip. So you can see how you could get a little bit more direction, a little bit more length from this shoulder to this wrist if you rotated this back shoulder around and behind you ever so slightly with just that torso rotation. That would allow you to start building the tension correctly. It'll probably prevent you from dropping this bow arm so much. It'll disengage the bicep some, because you definitely have still a little bit of a crooked wrist like this in this position here. I think it looks like it's possibly bent in a little bit. Again, you're fighting an old habit, so it's kind of normal. But if you're bringing this hand too far, and I can't see from this angle, but if this string is relatively in line with your eye and the target, you're gonna have to bend the wrist this way and engage more bicep to then pull along the target line. And that's why I said maybe pulling along the target line is not a good idea, but building more distance between the shoulder and this arm will make the hand come out ever so slightly from your face. And then as you go to draw, the hand will move in a straight line underneath your jawbone, as opposed to starting here like this, seeing my wrist in this position, and even more so with that elbow up high, because then there's a lot of movement that has to happen that's kind of very complicated to get into the ideal position. It doesn't look like the hand is directly between your eye and the target, but it's looking like it's a little bit too close for me. If I had to say, my arrow is probably pointed on a standard field where targets are, I don't know, they're about 18 inches or so between each bail. I'm pointing my arrow at least one, if not two targets to the left of me, because of how far out my hand is. The bow arm is going straight up and down between me and the target. It never moves to the left. It's just my string hand is so far to the right, and it points very far to the left. that allows me to really engage the back a lot as opposed to using so much bicep tension. So that is definitely, it's like I said before, I believe it's the most complicated movement in the sport. Actually, you have to start from the right place, pull from the right place, and kind of do some fairly complex moves to make things happen. And it will be much easier if you can make those things happen. So I think overall you're absolutely on the right path. Things are making good progress. Possibly you might need to shorten your draw length a little bit, because in this position, I'm going to go to another shot. Keep shaking the camera there. Head is perfect. Very neutral. Very good. As you lift, the torso is still great. Everything's in a good position. Everything's perfect to here. And then as you go to pull, watch the head. It kind of lifts and moves back and then stays that way. And then as you lift up, it's a little bit it looks a little bit difficult to kind of get into the position there. So trying to keep that head still as you go to pull. Don't fall back as you pull. Try to just rotate into it and try to maintain, like you have a pull through your top of your skull, through your neck, through your spine, and into your ground, and you rotate around that position. You don't lean back as you're pulling. I'm not saying you're leaning a ton, but it definitely is a fair amount that I can see, and it's probably about a 1/4 inch shorter worth of draw length, give or take, because when you're going from here, see how the head is down and flat? Try to look at the angle of the hat, because your head doesn't move a whole lot. It mostly just lifts up. But you're looking straight ahead, and then as you go to pull, see how now you're starting to look more down because the head lifts up. And so it's, I think, and then you smush the head back down as you get into anchor, but then because you have to lift the bow back up again, the head has to rotate backwards a little bit again. So what's going on is just a little bit of head movement that is going to cause a little bit of disturbance in the body. It's going to mess up your feeling in regards to just your overall body awareness, and it's going to cause probably some draw length inconsistencies if I had to guess. So if you're noticing your timing is going too short or too long and it's kind of varying a lot, it could be because of head position change, just something as simple as that. So pay attention to that. Kind of use your timing or how difficult it is to get through the clicker as a gauge on whether or not you're doing the right thing in regards to your head position and trying to keep that still. Overall, let me look at the groups on the target, because like I said, your overall positioning looks pretty good. And this vertical group variance, because that's what this is, it's not very much left and right, it's mostly up and down. Let me see. I think you posted a target face here. Maybe. I thought I saw a target face. That was just that, but the vertical variance is going to be in head position for sure, because as you move the head up and down, the distance from your eye to the arrow changes relative in space vertically as you move your head up and down. That distance shrinks and grows, which is going to change the vertical impact point downrange. Then you add in the potential for the variance and pressure point from having things being a little bit off there. That will also change your vertical grouping. Plus, it's a new anchor. Easy to misset your anchor and have variance there in your vertical grouping too. So it just kind of, those three things together is probably why you're seeing that type of grouping and why you have some issues there. So you've got a scope. Make sure you shoot your shot. Analyze how it felt first. Make sure the head position and stuff, pay attention to that and the anchor. Again, get a feeling of how the shot went first. Then visually look at your arrow, where it went on the target. And then you can see, oh, it went low. Timing went long. Timing goes long when possibly, I don't know, which head position, forward or back. Probably forward, it takes a little bit longer. And then maybe because of that, the pressure ended up dropping out the bottom when the shot broke. And it's not on that, strong pressure point to the center of the target. So that's kind of how it can go. Just try to pay attention to what it feels like, and then try to have an association with the correlation of the result on the target. But it does take a lot of effort on your part as the shooter to kind of really approach things as genuinely honest as possible without rushing to conclusion of, well, I don't even know, right? You got to figure it out. You got to find out what the problem is first, then look at the scope, or maybe not the problem, but how it went first. Then look at the scope, get a visual reference point as to where the arrow landed on the target, and then you can self-diagnose in real time as things are going on. Especially if you're like, I don't know how that shot went, but previously before when the arrow hits low, timing goes long, head position was wrong, and then you go, oh, I'll remember it on the next shot, and that's kind of how you should approach it. So hopefully this helps. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Thanks again for submitting a video coaching review, and I'm glad you're back at it.